here today, of course, for sentencing, gives us an opportunity to speak about other matters that I think are involved in sentencing and where we are in the criminal justice system in the processing of this case. As a member of an elected office representing the people of the state of Minnesota, as well as the people of the local community, I want to say a couple of things. And first of all, I want to really thank some of the police officers in the Minneapolis Police Department who, under great pressure, great stress, and to some extent at peril to their occupations, what they've devoted their life to, stuck to their oath and their commitment as police officers to speak openly and honestly about policing and the training that is given and received by police officers. Those officers didn't hide behind a blue wall. They came forward, they told this court and those jurors what they knew about training and responsibility, and I think they deserve recognition and credit for that. I would also like to thank members of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Those agents get called in, great sacrifice to their personal lives. Whenever things happen, they go. They did that here, and under really extraordinary circumstances, completed a very professional and thorough investigation. Conducting interviews is hard enough, but conducting them in the atmosphere of the city following the murder of George Floyd was even more difficult. And they did so, I think, above and beyond the call of duty. And I want to thank them for doing that on behalf of the whole prosecution staff. Your Honor, I want to thank the family, the loved ones, the friends of George Floyd. They have been through so much more than families involved in murder cases. He's right. It's a fraternity you don't want to be part of. But they've been through so much more because of the pandemic and because of security, safety precautions that we've had to take. They have been through a lot. At a time when they try to grieve, like everybody does for the loss of someone, they are going through so much more. And I want to thank them, all of them, the family. The court saw a testimony from Philonise Floyd, Courtney Ross. These are people who are trying to deal with their loss, but they have to do it in a very public way and under very trying circumstances through no fault of their own. So I thank them. They have all been models of grace and understanding. And it's really remarkable, quite frankly. I'll, I think, come back to them again in a little bit. Your Honor, we have submitted a sentencing brief. I would incorporate that. I guess I would incorporate my comments today into that memo. But I do think there are things that I want to bring out today in my arguments. For hundreds of years, the court had discretion in sentencing. It was the trial court's decision on what a sentence should be. The recognition that the trial court sat through the trial, watched the evidence, and saw how it affected people, informed the court's discretion. When the legislature passed the guidelines, in a legitimate attempt to try and even out sentences, they defined certain presumptive sentences, as we all know, for typical crimes. For each crime, the typical crime. But they did not remove discretion for sentencing judges. They recognized that nobody is better suited to decide whether this is the typical case represented by that guidelines presumptive sentence, or if there are reasons why this is worse than that. And it gave, and the guideline still gives this court discretion when there are aggravating factors to give a more serious sentence than what the guidelines presumption calls for. And as you know, we are asking you to do that today. As this court found, there are 4 aggravating factors that we have identified. They go beyond a list of just what those factors are. We have not just done our homework and found a list. The court made good findings, detailed findings about those factors, and we think they justify a greatly increased sentence. This is not the typical second-degree unintentional murder. The Supreme Court in our state has said that, and very recently, even 1 aggravating factor is sufficient to go twice the top of the range. Here we have 4. The first one that the court found is an abusive position of trust and authority. And the court specifically found that when Mr. Chauvin was acting as a police officer, he had a position of trust and authority. That is certainly true. We trust police officers. We trust them when we need help. We call them for help. We trust that they're going to take care of the problems that they are assigned to deal with, right? We trust them. We also give them great authority. We give them great power. We give them power to use force that individuals would be prosecuted for using, right? We give them authority to arrest, to detain. And with great power, of course, comes great responsibility. So they're not sent out there by themselves to do this. They're given substantial training. This court saw all of that through the trial, in general and in specific to Mr. Chauvin and the other 3 officers. They're given training on the use of force, the proportional use of force. The force used has to be warranted by the threat. They're given training on de-escalation because we recognize that police officers are called in when people are not having their best day, when people might be affected by mental illness, drug abuse, any number of issues. They're just having a bad day, and they're trained for that and should be. And they're taught how to use that to de-escalate and control a situation. They're taught medical intervention. They're taught to provide medical attention to people who need it. Being a police officer is a difficult job. We ask a lot of them. It's a profession, there's no doubt about it. But we give them a substantial amount of training, and most officers do it right. This case wasn't about police officers, all police officers. It wasn't about policing. This case was about Derek Chauvin disregarding all that training he received and assaulting Mr. Floyd until he suffocated to death. One of the things that you heard, Your Honor, and the jurors heard that can really encapsulate, I think, a very important issue here. 7 words. In your custody is in your care. And it's a real simple mantra. It's a real easy thing to remember. You're going to take custody of somebody, you have to provide care. You have to do it in a caring way. You can't simply disregard their care. Mr. Chauvin abused his position of trust and authority as a police officer by doing just that, just disregarding all his training. It was an abuse of that because what did he decide to do? We often are forced in this criminal justice system to infer people's state of mind by their conduct and their statements. What was Derek Chauvin's end game here? What was the plan? It seems apparent the plan was hold him down until we can dump him in an ambulance and no longer have him be our problem. You recall he said to Charles McMillan, he's a big guy, might be on something. That's it. He held Mr. Floyd down as Mr. Floyd begged for his life. He had the other officers help in that regard. And rather than doing the simple expedient of putting him on his side, he said, yeah, He was dismissive to that duty of care. We trust that arrestees will be treated with respect, reasonable force, and that their medical needs will be addressed. I'm paraphrasing from the court's findings. That trust was violated. We trust that they will use their authority reasonably, and this was a particularly egregious abuse of that force. Again, paraphrasing the court's findings. The typical second-degree murder does not involve that extent of abuse of a dearly held position of abuse or a position of authority and trust by the community and by individuals of the community. Your Honor found that Mr. Floyd was treated by Mr. Chauvin with particular cruelty. I think tortured is the right word. We know that, we've all seen it. Mr. Floyd did not want to be in the back seat. That's it. That's the rub. It was the need to get him in that back seat no matter what. And we all saw that once he was pulled out of that back seat, he calmed right down. He even willingly went down to the ground. I'm going down, he said. And he went down to the ground, not fighting, not punching, and he was placed initially on his side. He's already handcuffed. He's placed on his side in the recovery position, like he should be, because he's trying to breathe, and then quickly placed prone on the ground, face down. Mr. Chauvin put his left knee on George Floyd's neck, his right knee on George Floyd's back, face down on the pavement. Had Officer King sit on Mr. Floyd's waist area, and had Officer Lane hold his feet down. You can even see Mr. Floyd trying to pull his feet up. We all are going to fight to breathe. Everybody knows that fear when you all of a sudden realize you're having trouble breathing. It's just innate, right? We want to survive. We know we have to breathe. And there's an automatic reaction when you begin to feel like that is threatened. And you can see Mr. Floyd going through that. He tries to pull his feet up. But he's held down by these three officers while Officer Tao is looking on. Later, of course, goes to keep the people who want to help away. He's placed face down on this pavement so harshly that it rubs the skin off his face. He has injuries to his face from being face down on that pavement. He has injuries to his knuckles from just trying to lift himself up. And he's telling Officer Chauvin, I can't breathe. I'm dying. And Mr. Chauvin's response was, And all this time, imagine what Mr. Floyd is going through. If we're going to talk about particular cruelty and torture, really try to appreciate what he's going through. He knows he's suffocating. We all know that feeling of not being able to breathe enough. And he's begging, he's pleading, and he's being ignored. His concerns are being dismissed by somebody who has taken custody but not care. He was kept in that prone position for 9.5 minutes and was suffocated. There's no other way to say it. That's particularly cruel. That is more cruel than the typical second-degree unintentional murder. Significantly more. This is not a momentary gunshot, punch to the face. This is 9.5 minutes of cruelty to a man who was helpless and just begging for his life. This court found that there were children present, standing only a few feet from these officers. These children, who were ages 17 and one child age 9. Why is that an aggravating factor? Well, I think everybody can figure that out. Right? It's particularly bad to commit a crime in front of children. We've heard a lot of academia about the development of the young brain and how long it can take. And here you got a couple of teenage girls, and a 9-year-old girl. How are they going to process this? Standing feet from a man being suffocated by police officers. Such a stark sight that one of the children even says, we got to call the police on the police. How do you process that as a 9-year-old? The children were not only present watching a man die. We've all seen, if you haven't, you really need to. Look at George Floyd's face. As he's dying, he's suffering. The children have to watch this. But not only that, it's police officers, and there are people around them wanting to help. And at one point, and sure, they got upset. And at one point, Mr. Chauvin points his mace, grabs his mace to keep him back. How does a child look at that? There's another officer screaming at them to get back. The typical second-degree unintentional murder doesn't involve children standing feet away watching a 9.5-minute suffocation of a man begging for his life. This court also made a finding that the defendant committed the offense with the involvement of 3 or more other persons. Lane and King were involved directly in the restraint, and that Tao kept the bystanders at bay. I've already talked a little bit about Lane and King's role in holding Mr. Floyd down. They recognized that he was pulseless, that Mr. Floyd was pulseless at one point, and yet really made no effort to take care of the person in their custody. Officer Tao watched most of the suffocation and then only went over to keep people from giving help. One person who is identified as a medical trained firefighter for the city of Minneapolis, and that was dismissed. Like, are we going to believe her? So they kept trained medical people from providing help. These were all uniformed peace officers, adding to that abuse of trust and authority. Your Honor, I know the defense has asked the court for probation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time arguing that. It's so outside of the realm of, I think, real possibility. This is a murder. I understand some of the arguments made on behalf of Mr. Chauvin. I understand, well, no, I can't understand what his family members and friends are going through. I can't. But it's certainly not enough for a departure to probation for a second-degree murder. We believe, Your Honor, that these 4 aggravating factors and the findings that the court has made certainly justify an upward departure because there are 4 of them, not standing alone, but in a sense, not overlapping, but coming together to show this is not the typical second-degree murder. This is egregious. And this justifies a double upward departure. From the top of the box, which is 180 months, we're asking the court to do a double departure, recognizing all 4 factors, to 360 months. As I mentioned before, Your Honor, this is sentencing. This is the time for victims, right? This is the time for the loved ones of the victim and the community to have a say. Again, I commend this family. I commend all of the loved ones, the friends, the people that have been involved in this case for tolerating and being gracious. None of this, of course, can bring George Floyd back. That's very true. But this is the time for our criminal justice system to say, we hear you. This is the time for their criminal justice system to say, we recognize that this harm you're going through is real, and while we can't feel what you're feeling, we know we can do what your criminal justice system should do and recognize the severity of this crime and reflect that in the sentence to be given. It's time for this criminal justice system to say, we recognize this is more serious than the typical second-degree unintentional murder. The 4 reasons the court found reflect that and give this court more than an adequate basis to do that. Your Honor, we ask the court to impose a sentence of 360 months, commitment to the Commissioner of Corrections. As you know, Your Honor, there are no fines in murder cases. And we would ask the court just to reserve the issue of restitution. So we can clarify that with the family and present that to the court for 30 days. Thank you, Your Honor.